Well, Tajamuka started off as a campaign. It still is a campaign. Many people confuse it for a movement, for an organization. It's not that at all. It's a campaign of young people who took the initiative and said, let's come together and unite under one umbrella for action. So what all that Tajamuka does is to unite young people and act on the challenges and the problems that the country is facing. Of note is that it is composed of 14 political parties that fully subscribe to the idea of the Tajamuka campaign, and more than 30 civic society organizations, mainly made up of young people. But little had we foreseen, it has spread even to elderly people, into the diaspora, and we are very happy about that, because Tajamuka, as you can tell from the word, is an expression of the feelings of the people of Zimbabwe and the sort of actions that they need to undertake to express that kujamuka that the word espouses.
What does the word espouses?
Well, it means literally that we are agitated, we have revolted, we are outraged, we are angry, we are not happy with the situation in the country. But above that, it also has an implicit expression of taking action. Because if you are not happy, you have to do something about it. The two cannot be separated. So we, as young people, decided to come up with that word, to say we are outraged and we are going to act upon it, to correct the ills that our country finds itself in. It also has a Ndebele equivalent, which is sesjigile. It literally means the same thing. So Tajamuka, in short, is a campaign of young people from various political backgrounds, civic society organizations, youth pressure groups, the informal sector, coming together to act upon the problems that are bedeviling the country.
What are some of these political parties that are part of this campaign?
You have the PDZ, Zunde, the NCA, the PDP, the MDC led by Professor Welshman Ncube, the MDC led by Dr. Morgan Richard Tsvangirai, RDZ, and many others who are part and parcel of Tajamuka. I can't count them all now, but they go up to 14 of those political parties.
It's fair to say that Tajamuka is a partisan campaign?
No, it's not fair, because these are various parties coming together.
And they all are opposition political parties?
Certainly, they are all opposition or political parties. We are definitely, it's a grouping of people that are opposed to the misrule of ZANU-PF. So yes, in that sense, we are indeed very, very opposed to the manner in which ZANU-PF has run the country, and that is exactly what we seek to bring to an end.
You said this movement is an action-based movement.
Yes.
Can you briefly explain what you mean by that?
What we mean is that Tajamuka is about acting on the ground.
What
doing things, expressing ourselves, expressing our agitation, our outrage, our anger, through doing things on the ground, addressing people on the grounds, addressing the young people, going to the bank queues, addressing the people there, making the marches. All forms of peaceful protest is what Tajamuka is about. We rarely issue press statements, we rarely issue interviews such as this one. We normally prefer that journalists and the media come to cover us on the ground, acting on the things that we have outlined. I'm sure you know about the demands that we've made and with which we are clear about. So that's the action that we are talking about.
It's interesting that you have said you are a peaceful movement.
Yes.
But your opponents have accused you of violence. How do you respond to that?
Well, it's ridiculous for the most violent elements to accuse us of being violent. Our protests are totally lawful. Yes, ZANU-PF has provoked violence in some of the events that we've carried out, and turn around and try to say Tajamuka is violent. No, we are not. Even the Herald describes us as a shadowy group. We are not a shadowy group at all. We are operating in the open and in full, under the full confines of the law, the laws of our country. We are very clear about that, and we operate peacefully but resolutely.
I understand some people within Zimbabwe have accused the organization first for incidents that took place at Bedbridge, where some building was burnt. They've accused you of some blockades in main roads in some of the big cities in Zimbabwe. Should that be true, wouldn't that be characterized or described as violence?
No,
Or attempts to cause violence?
First and foremost, I want to reiterate that we operate in a very peaceful manner and above board. All our operations are very peaceful and above board. There are things which citizens do that we cannot take responsibility for in the expression of their anger, that we are not responsible for. But we are in support of citizens, showing the government their unhappiness, their disquiet about the things that are happening in the country. We stated and we repeat that the warehouse at the Bedbridge border post was actually burnt by Zimre officials who wanted to conceal their stenching corruption and evidence of that in that building, and then divert and try to say Tajamuka has done that. No, that is not true.
State institutions, they've dragged some of the people alleged to have been involved in causing damage of property, blocking some roads in some cities to court. And your movement, I mean your campaign has gone public of having bailed out some of these people who have been accused by state of being involved in these incidents. How then can you claim that you are a peaceful movement when some of the people that you have helped with bail have been accused of being involved in these incidents?
They are being falsely accused by the government. It is, as I said, it is the state that tries to provoke violence. They are desperate for an excuse to use violence against the people. That is all they know. That is their sphere of strength. And we have not allowed them to enter into that terrain. So they are desperate to provoke violence. So whenever we carry out peaceful action, they come in and provoke violence and try to blame our people. So yes, whenever and wherever our colleagues are arrested falsely on trumped up and spurious charges, we are not going to leave anyone behind. We will do everything that we can to bail them out and to fight for justice.
And another question one of our viewers has asked us to get a response from you is how Tajamuka is funded. The Zimbabwean government alleges that your campaign is funded by the West. In recent history, they've mentioned some countries. United States is one of them. Are you in any way funded by anyone?
No, we are not funded by any of the Western countries. We have not even approached them to fund us.
So how do you raise money for bail, for instance?
The people are going to fund their own struggle, and that is what we prefer. We want the people to fund their own struggle, to author their own struggle, and that way we know that the struggle is going to go the direction that the people want it to go. There are so many well-wishers all over the world, Zimbabwean people, who are prepared to support, not just financially, but in other means, to support what Tajamuka is doing in order to bring to an end the crisis in the country. As I said earlier on, if you look at the diaspora groups that have started to show solidarity with the actions that we are carrying out in Zimbabwe, they're not funded by anyone. They print their own T-shirts wherever they are. They take videos expressing their anger, and that's what we have been doing, and we are going to continue to do that. We want a Zimbabwean struggle that is ordered and supported by the Zimbabwean people, because that way we are going to have a true struggle of the people of Zimbabwe that has no conditions, that has no external interests of any sort. And it's very disappointing that every time something emerges which is opposed to ZANU-PF, they are quick to point out that it has been funded by the West. I think it is an insult to the people of Zimbabwe, and ZANU-PF should stop it. To continue to presuppose that Zimbabwean people are unable to think for themselves and to start their own initiatives, I think it's really undermining the intelligence of our people. And it's very, very unfortunate coming from a regime which claims to have been elected by the very same people that they have so little confidence in.
Some of your strong opponents, they go to the extremes of saying Promise Mkwananzi is pursuing selfish, narrow interest, is pursuing financial gain and some claim that he's pursuing political gain out of this. How do you respond to such extreme allegations?
What financial?
They say there's some funding that is coming into the organization.
From where?
And this funding is for...
We don't want people that make baseless statements. If there is any funding that they know about, let them put it. Nowadays, it's now easy. You have social media, you can put it in the open, and people can see it. We are not seeking any financial gain. If we were seeking financial gain, we would be working in the corporate world and making the money. That is not what we are after. We are after a great Zimbabwe. That Zimbabwe is supposed to.
And you are not seeking your own political capital of this?
Absolutely not. This is a campaign, and when it comes to an end, it will fold. And once we are satisfied that the objectives we have set for ourselves have been satisfied, we are going to fold this campaign. I think that should be clear evidence that this campaign has nothing to do with seeking political power. And we have insisted from the outset that we are not seeking any political power using Tajambo.
Don't you feel that your strong alliance with opposition parties that you have already mentioned that are part of this Tajamka campaign, it compromises the image of your campaign? Because it looks like it's only the opposition parties that are fighting ZANU-PF.
No. I said there are also civic society organizations, and the generality of the citizens are fully behind Tajambo.
And the civil society that you mentioned, for the past 10 years, they've been accused of also being anti-ZANU-PF.
Look, this campaign is anti-ZANU-PF because it is ZANU-PF that is responsible for the mess in the country. It is ZANU-PF that is responsible for the corruption in the country. It is ZANU-PF that is responsible for the police brutality that we see. And those are the things that we need corrected. And we know that those things cannot be corrected, for example, as long as President Mugabe is there. He is the sticking point against the reforms that are necessary to give the country a solid footing to reboot itself economically, socially, politically, and what have you. So there is a need for President Mugabe to step aside. That is in the public domain.
The main arguments of those in ZANU-PF, Professor Jonathan Moyo, psychologist Mazuisa, who is one of the spokesperson of ZANU-PF, are in public saying Mugabe is an elected president. So if you have to put Mugabe to step aside, they say their argument is that it should be in an election environment.
No.
So that means you have to wait for 2018?
No. We can't wait for 2018.
So what are you going to do?
Number one, the election of President Mugabe over the last decade is controversial. Is disputed. His legitimacy remains disputed because of a flawed electoral framework that favors ZANU-PF. So already we have a legitimate question around the election of President Mugabe. Secondly, there are means within the constitution to recall an elected leader if he has failed, if he is mentally incapacitated, if he is too old, and so on and so forth. And we have seen it even here in South Africa. They recalled President Begi as a party. That is what democracy is about. It is totally lawful and within the constitution for people to be able to call back a leader wherever they feel that he has failed. In 2008, we had to draw the election closer because of the deteriorating situation in the country. We were supposed to have elections in 2010, but we drew it closer because we saw that the situation required an early election.
But
so
you seem to be expecting a lot from ZANU-PF. Do you see ZANU-PF MPs participating in any process that will recall President Mugabe before 2018?
I think deep down some of them want to. I have a feeling that there are a lot of people within ZANU-PF who actually now want President Mugabe to go.
Would you see them participating in a parliamentary process that might recall President Mugabe?
I hope.
And do you think
I hope they would.
There are enough numbers to do that?
They should be. They should be.
And should that process fail, then the next point is 2018?
No. 2018 is too far, my friend. We are not going to reach that time. We have said that by August 31st of this year, President Mugabe must have outlined a transitional process and indicated to the nation when he intends to step down and hand over the nation to future generations and allow it to move forward. So we really are expecting that President Mugabe must
We'll come to the 31st August deadline. But what I want to understand is what happens if the parliamentary process falls? You fail to recall him using a legitimate parliamentary process. What becomes the next possible alternative?
My friend, we are going to escalate and intensify protests in order to put pressure on President Mugabe to step aside. As from the 31st of August, that is the kind of route that we're going to be taking. And those routes are totally within the constitution of the country, as long as they are peaceful and driven by citizens.
31st August is a month away.
Yes.
And in a few weeks, do you expect President Mugabe to outline his preferred transitional arrangement?
Not his preferred. We don't want his preferred. What we want is a transitional process with time frames, with benchmarks around the reforms that are needed for the country to take a different direction from what it is taking. And the prerogative of that process is the departure of President Mugabe from the office of the presidency, because he is now the sticking point. His long incumbency, his rigidity in terms of relationships with the international community, for example, is totally undermining the progress of the country. And I think he is a man who has crossed the red line, and his pride won't allow him to turn back. So the only thing that he must do now is then to step aside and allow someone who is able to put down their pride and put the country before their own egos.
You seem to be having two strategic interventions. The first one, which is protest, and the second one, which is what you are doing, addressing people randomly in different spaces.
Yes.
And this seems to be the two areas of your intervention. And the third one is an expectation of a goodwill response from members of the parliament. And these three interventions, do you see them as realistic, factoring what is happening now in Zimbabwe? You have already heard about what President Mugabe said when he was addressing citizens yesterday at the burial of one of the heroes. Do you see these three interventions? Do you see any of the three working out?
I think they're already working. If you see the response of President Mugabe and the panic within ZANU-PF, it's really evidence that the pressure on the ground is beginning to bear on him and his people. Today, ZANU-PF youths are all over town protesting against the protests, whatever they call it. It shows you that the protests that are in the country have had an impact. And yet, I can tell you for sure that that's just less than a quarter of what we have in store in terms of those protests. And the conditions favor us naturally. ZANU-PF is going to be unable to pay civil servants in the long run. They are going to fail on many fronts on their own. And if they're not careful, things are just going to fall apart if that action is not taken. And it's going to have a very adverse effect on the legacy of President Mugabe. We are saying that he still has a chance to salvage himself and live, although with a dented, but with some legacy to talk about. The way things are going, and if they continue in the direction that they are.
Is Zimbabwe close to a civil war?
Zimbabwe is close to a civil unrest, not war, where civic groupings, where citizens become so agitated that it becomes very difficult to contain them. And the only way to contain them is to address the reasons why they are agitated. And those reasons are economic reasons, failure to pay civil servants. The long incumbence of President Mugabe remains a very, very pertinent issue around that issue as well.
Have you tried to engage some of the regional actors? We have strong interest with what's happening in Zimbabwe. I mean, there's SADC, there's AU. These are possible platforms where you could raise these issues that you are saying about President Mugabe.
Absolutely. Those are going to be very, very key and strategic stakeholders in the resolution of the Zimbabwean crisis. Although we have not formally started to engage them, we are very alive to the need at some point to be able to engage the region and to explain to the region our thinking, the positions that we are taking and why we are taking them, and to show them that Tajamuka is not a joke. It's a big campaign with a very large national sentiment behind it. And so in that way, we do have the legitimacy to engage with these groupings, the international, regional and international actors. And we hope that they take a principled approach to the issues. And I mean, stick to the values and the principles that guide their operations. We had a bit of issues with the International Monetary Fund, when they were in discussions with the ZANU-PF government, and we were saying, look, this government is not a good candidate for financial assistance. They already have with $15 billion that is unaccounted for. Why do you want to give them money? They're going to direct it to their pockets rather than to the citizens who badly need it. And they're going to use some of that money to buy machinery to suppress the people, to buy machinery to compromise the electoral
You don't feel that such kind of campaigns, they also work against the same citizens that you feel they need to be liberated from first the economic crisis and surely in the medium to long term?
In what way?
Well, if Zimbabwean government doesn't get financial aid from IMF, then that is not going to be able to pay salaries like what is happening now.
You think if they get it, they're going to pay salaries? They had 15 billion. Why did they pay salaries?
Well, that
they're
money
not going to pay salaries. They are going to line up their pockets. They are going to
But that's an
buy
assumption.
more state machinery.
That's an assumption, promise.
No, that's not an assumption. That's not an assumption.
We certainly cannot say ZANU-PF is going to use the money from IMF to line their pockets.
What if they use
The assumption
15?
that we can make is that they are desperately in need of money first to pay civil servants, which is a real crisis they are facing right now. And again, sustaining other state institutions requires money.
My friend, you are presuming that ZANU-PF is citizens at heart. They had $15 billion. They didn't pay a single servant. The resources that are in the country should be sufficient to support the people in Zimbabwe.
So the call that you are making, promise, is likely to crumble the Zimbabwean government.
The Zimbabwean government has crumbled itself through misgovernance. We don't need to crumble it. They have crumbled themselves by the tragic leadership failure of Mugabe and his ministers. They are on a self-destruct button. We don't need to help them.
So if they fail to pay civil servants, let's say in August, in September, in October, what happens? Because now there's no other international interventions that can come through. If the campaign of yours are going to get any ear from anybody.
We believe that this campaign, and together with others, remember there are also many voices that are talking, we are going to bring that discussion on the table. We are going to drag ZANU-PF kicking and screaming to the table so that we carry out the transitional processes that
so you are using, so in a way, you are using financial muscle.
We don't have any financial. We don't have any financial muscle.
We
don't have the capacity to use those institutions.
No, you are approaching IMF. They have the money
to do that. We didn't approach them. We petitioned them,
advising
them.
Did.
We petitioned them, advising them against financing the rogue regime of Robert Mugabe. In light of the escalating human rights abuses, the corruption in the country, and the lack of institutions to ensure that that money is channeled and used properly.
I promise. How is that different from calling for sanctions? If you are going to pressure IMF not to give the Zimbabwean government any financial support because you claim that it is a violent government, it's repressing its citizens. How different is that?
It's
calling
not instituting.
How is that different with calling for sanctions against the Zimbabwean government?
What sanctions?
Economic sanctions?
No. I don't know about the sanctions. Here we're talking about principles, my friend. The Zimbabwean government, in our view, let me put this very clearly, in our view, as it is presently constituted, if given financial assistance, it will not be of any help to the country and importantly, to the citizens. Instead, that money may be channeled towards lining up the pockets of those that are AFI offices, towards importing more ammunition to suppress the citizens. That is unacceptable. It shouldn't work like that. If the ZANU-PF is serious about getting financial assistance, there are things that they must fix first. The policy ambivalence, for example. There is no clear policies to ensure that if that money comes, it is channeled. There is no strategy for economic reform. Zero. The indigenization policies are so hostile to possible investors in the country. We cannot ignore the fact that our economy needs to be globally competitive and connected. And as long as we remain in that archaic and isolated space, whatever assistance we're going to get is not going to help lift the country. And therefore, it becomes pointless for anybody to pour money in a bottomless hole.
So, other than the Tajamka campaign that you're part of, there's also other campaigns like This Flag led by Pastor Ivan Mawarire. There's also another campaign that is led by MDCT Deputy President Thokozani Kupe called Beat the Pot. Do you work with these other movements? with this other campaign?
Definitely. We work with the political parties already. Myself and Pastor Ivan have had very fruitful discussions around how to maximize our strengths and to complement each other. When he went to court, we mobilized massively, and our people spent the whole day there with him. We recognize very much the importance of the work he is doing and the groundbreaking things that he has done. And so we're saying, let's put together all those voices for the betterment of our country.
One of our viewers asked us to ask that if these two campaigns, this flag and Tajamuka, are using the same means, which is peaceful in the same means.
Well, there are pros and cons to both. If you are a single unity, it's also very easy for them to crush you. If you have many units, you have many voices, one message, many voices kind of approach. It's also very useful. I think what is important is for people to understand that they are aiming for the same cause, and whatever they're doing should gradually feed. I think the time will come when all the democratic forces are going to come under one umbrella. When we have achieved a certain milestone, at a certain level, we are going to have a situation where we're saying, everybody come together. Morgan Tsvangirai and other opposition leaders, this flag, Mr. Pastor Ivan Mawarire and the church, I think is going to be a very important voice around the church and the moral voice. And Tajamuka, being more militant, if you like, they need then to come together and ensure that we work together to finish off the transition this we're talking about.
You know, going through this conversation, it's difficult for one to, looking at what is happening now in Zimbabwe and what has been happening over the past 15 years, is there any hope in this country?
Certainly.
And where do you derive that hope from?
From the resilience of our people, and also the fact that Zimbabwe is a great country. There is no doubt about that. We can doubt other things. We can doubt our leadership. We can doubt the situation at the present, but we can never doubt that Zimbabwe is a great country with great potential, with great people, highly educated people, with infinite natural resources, if you like, that we could just, within a very short space of time, turn around the country to something totally different. That is why people are so angry, because of the potential that the country has against the reality that we are in today. That's what makes people so angry.